The Edmonton Oilers came oh so close, but alas, it was not enough. Let's get to work.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very depressing Tuesday into Tuesday night edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, I'm going to be honest, friends. Today's episode, there's going to be a lot of rambling. I don't really have a set mindset of where we're going to go, but I have a lot of thoughts, and let's just get on into it. This game on the outset, coming in, felt pretty good. The way the previous three games had gone, the way the style of game was going, the rush offense was there. Florida was clunky. Florida wasn't moving the puck well. Florida wasn't cycling. They weren't forechecking well enough. And for three games, you saw what you needed to do to beat Florida. And then Florida clamped it down tonight. This was as textbook a game shutdown game 7 as you can imagine. And I knew the Oilers were in trouble when I said to myself as I was watching the game, I haven't heard McDavid's name in a while, and then I haven't heard Draisaitl's name in a while. And I saw them out there on the ice, but being that the commentator hadn't said their name, they weren't on the puck, which that's not an indictment of them. That's also a commendation of Florida's ability to take away space, to take away plays. And I don't want to turn this into a witch hunt. I don't want to point fingers. I don't want to blame individuals. We'll get there. We'll have a conversation about what didn't work, what could have worked, that type of thing. But if you are an Oilers fan who is grappling with the existential dread that the greatest season in the last 18 years has come to an end prematurely without the Stanley Cup, your feelings are valid. This is about as heartbreaking a tease as it gets in all of sports. If you are a fan of a particularly tortured franchise, Cubs pre-2016, if you're a Met fan, if you're a Leafs fan, if you're a fan of a team that always finds ways to lose, it seems like just when you think you're done, you have no reason to care anymore, they pull you back in and you're like, oh, we're going to do this. We can do this. That was games 4, 5, and 6. And then tonight, it's not that the Oilers played badly. It's that they didn't capitalize on the opportunities before them. And that's why the Panthers have the cup and they don't. The Oilers didn't have a bad game tonight. Would you like some of those goals back? Yes, of course. You definitely want some of those goals back. At the same time, you're not going to win against the Panthers if you only score one goal. Ask the Rangers. They tried. And this is the conundrum. These two teams are in direct contrast with each other and what they want to do to be successfully. For the first three games, you saw Florida kind of get what they wanted. Then for the last three games, you saw Edmonton get what they wanted. Edmonton got the transition going. Florida couldn't cycle them because Edmonton was breaking the puck out quickly. Edmonton was getting their guys going up and down, up and down, up and down. And when you're trading chances, the scores are going to be higher. This game, complete opposite of the previous three. And that's what was so frustrating about watching this game. I kept going back to that one sequence in game number 3 where the Oilers got close to tying that game. And the thing I kept coming back to, that was game number 2, excuse me. The Oilers had chances, but tonight, the thing about tonight's game, it felt like watching a plane crash in slow motion. Because every single time an Oiler takes a shot from the point, they take a shot from the top of the circles, it's not getting through all the traffic. It's not finding a way through. And that's something I did want to highlight. I'm pulling up the box score here so I can talk about it accurately. So I'm going to sort the box by shots on goal. 4 shots for Foegele, 2 shots for Hyman, 2 shots for Henrique, 2 shots for McDavid, 1 for Connor Brown, 1 for Janmark, 1 for Nuge, and then 5 for Bouchard, 4 for Ekholm, 1 for Ceci, 1 for Nurse. The fact that your leading shot getter in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final was Evan Bouchard, and then Matthias Ekholm with 4, and Warren Foegele with 4, that tells me there wasn't a lot of space out there. That tells me that Florida was doing a really good job of compressing around the net. They were absorbing pressure. When Edmonton was able to gain the zone with speed, Florida was dropping their defenders back. There wasn't a whole lot of room. And because of that, Edmonton had to work a lot harder for its offense. And you heard me talk about this with Armando, and congrats to Armando, the Panthers. I'm glad, even though I'm not happy the Oilers lost, I'm glad Armando gets to experience that. Everybody should get to experience their team win something once, just once. Anything more than that, you start to become greedy and entitled. But everyone should get one. So happy for Armando. I am happy for the people I know that care about the Panthers. I am not happy that the Panthers won. There is a difference. We talked a lot that when you make Edmonton cycle, when you make Edmonton go high to low on the cycle, where you get the puck out to the point, if Bouchard is taking the shot, and I know Bouchard's got a great shot. He's one of the best shooting defensemen in the league. Anytime Bouchard is on the ice and he shoots instead of McDavid or Hyman or Draisaitl, that's a win. Anytime Matthias Ekholm shoots instead of Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid, that's a win for Florida. And it's risk assessment. It's risk tolerance. Is Bouchard a good shooter? Yes. But where is he shooting from? He's shooting from the points. He's shooting from the circles. Those are a lot less likely to result in goals. And the one other thing that drove me nuts about this game, and I know I'm entirely rambling stream of consciousness, but I just have a lot of things I want to get to. And I did want to get this. I did want to do this live as soon as the game was over. As soon as I saw poor Connor winning the Conn Smythe, he's going to stare into the void on that plane ride. It's a long plane ride. I Googled it before I came on. It's 7 hours and 55 minutes from Miami to Edmonton. That is going to be the quietest flight in the history of air travel. I cannot imagine the emotions. And we're going to talk about the emotions. We're going to talk about processing these types of losses because, I'm going to save that thought because that's a good thread to tug on. And I'm going to save that for one of the next 2 segments. I don't want to get into that with only a minute and a half to go. But this game, it lived up to the hype. We talked about on the show yesterday the recent history of Game 7s, a lot of 4-1s, a lot of 3-1s. St. Louis 4-1 over the Bruins 4-0 over Vancouver in 2011. It had been a while since we had a Stanley Cup final Game 7 that lived up to the hype. And the reason I know it lived up to the hype was during the national anthems, I felt that little pit in my stomach of, oh yeah, we're doing this. This is for everything. This is for what you spend your entire life to get to. And we talked a lot about the stories and the journey and why that's what makes sports so special in their ability to bring people together from all different types of places, all different types of backgrounds. And it just sucks it had to end that way for Edmonton. And I'll wrap up the segment on this note. 2015, second round Eastern Conference Finals. Barry Trotz is talking to Doc Emmerich, Pierre Maguire, Eddie Olczyk, pregame morning skate, I think. And Doc was talking with Barry Trotz, who was the Capitals coach at the time. They hadn't won the Stanley Cup yet. And he says, a series like this, it's a shame someone has to lose because both of these teams have played great. No margin for error. And this is about as nail-biting and as close as you're going to get in a 7-game series. I know it took a roundabout way of getting to be a very close series, but it just sucks it had to be this way. It really does. It is so unfair. And that's where we get into the... All right, I'm going to save that thought because that's tied to what we were going to talk about. So I'm going to take a quick break, check in with one of our friends, and be right back. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. Unfortunately, hockey's over now. We've got fewer options, less to watch. the sports, they're not sportsing like I want them to. The Oilers didn't win. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. We got a full slate of Major League Baseball. We got the WNBA. That's plenty to get in on the action. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. I want to thank everybody who is grueling it out. I am sure you woke up Tuesday morning when you're listening to this episode. If you have the fortitude to endure listening to an episode about your team losing Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, I salute you. If you're listening to the audio version, not watching on YouTube, I did actually literally salute, because you're a lot tougher than me. I really feel like I got punched in the stomach, and I'm genuinely mad ESPN showed the camera angle of McDavid with his head down on the bench after they lost 3 seconds after the game ended, because it feels very tacky. It feels like, he's showing emotion. He's weak. He should be embarrassed. And I feel like we're losing the plot. I feel like in that type of moment, we should be celebrating the people who won. And I get it. TV is about emotion. You can't let people change the channel no matter what. And for the casual person who tuned in just because there was a Game 7, I will say I did quite enjoy seeing a lot of media personalities who don't normally watch hockey, like Bomani Jones, tweeting about hockey in a very he said watching a Game 7 with a rooting interest must be like watching Uncut Gems, but it's for real. And that's a really apt comparison for sitting through the agony that was that game, because when a game is that close, all it takes is one. All it takes is one bounce. All it takes is one misdirection. And Edmonton had golden opportunities. They had 2 pucks in the crease with Bobrovsky down. All they had to do was get puck on stick. Fogle had that golden opportunity. McDavid had that golden opportunity. They were that close to tying the game. Who's to say if Edmonton wins if they tie the game? But at least if they tie the game, they get some breathing room. Florida stops dumping and chasing. Florida has to put more of an effort towards scoring as opposed to just holding the puck. Speaking of holding the puck, I'm going to separate this into two separate ideas. Number one, Evan Rodriguez, the hockey player, is somebody I have long advocated smart hockey teams sign, because he is very clearly good at hockey and has certain types of valuable traits, his grittiness, that are valuable. Him sitting on the puck is one of the most asinine things I have ever seen. I get you're trying to kill time. I get you're just doing your job. Sitting on the puck and daring the officials to stop play, burning 8-9 seconds, it's asinine. You shouldn't be allowed. You should get a penalty for doing that, in all honesty. If you sit on the puck and stop play and wait for the officials to stop, you suck. You are. And look, I get it. That's Florida's shtick. Him, Sam Bennett, Kachuk, I get it. That's their shtick. They're miserable. They're rats. They play right on that line of where you want to play in the playoffs, and it was effective for them. It's why I'm lamenting the offseason that is going to engulf the NHL of, you got to get tough like Florida. You got to get tough like Florida. When Florida has constructed a team in a way that pretty much nobody else is going to be able to replicate, because they've had 2 different GMs assemble this team. Florida is the outlier. We get one of these every handful of years. You get St. Louis in 2019. You get the Capitals in 2017. You get that Bruins team in 2011. That's an outlier roster construction. I was talking with somebody the other day about it. Like, how is Florida this good when they don't score a lot? Well, they've got really good defense and they got Bobrovsky. Yeah, but don't you need to score in today's? Yes. Every other team in the NHL is trying to score as many goals as possible. The Florida Panthers are trying to beat you with a bunch of baseball bats. Like that viral tweet about the Knicks, where every night in the NBA, a team scoring 140 points. Then you go to Madison Square Garden and Tom Thibodeau and Josh Hart beat beat you up with hammers for 2 hours. That's what Florida did. Florida played, 90s Knicks basketball. They played Tom Thibodeau hockey tonight. They were miserable. They were frustrating. And I really had a hard time envisioning what an Edmonton game that was successful was going to look like as it went along. Going into the game, I was like, oh, yeah, sure. They'll keep going. They'll get their rush chances. They just got to put the puck in the net. Tonight, Edmonton did not put the puck in the net. It's really that simple. You can say, oh, well, this, oh, well, that. They only scored 1 goal in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final against the best defensive team in the league with a Hall of Fame goalie. You're not going to do better than that, man. You're just not. And look, not a lot of special teams. 2 chances for Florida, 1 for Edmonton. Edmonton didn't convert theirs. And yes, for anybody who is disputing whether Matthew Tkachuk should have been called for tripping or interference, I point you to the EA Sports NHL hockey franchise. That is 100% a trip. Do not give me incidental. Do not give me an accident. You are responsible for your body. Tkachuk could have tucked his legs and gotten out of McDavid's way. He didn't. So spare me that's not a penalty. It was an accident. Yeah, you're in charge of your stick when you high stick somebody too, and that's an accident. Let's be honest here. Florida won. We can say that was a penalty. It's okay. Very funny. That was the one time Dave Jackson, the rules expert on ESPN, actually contradicted the call on the ice the entire playoffs. I think that's anecdotal. Don't quote me on that. I do not have the stats in front of me. I wish there was something I could say to make you feel better, but there isn't. This is one of those losses that is going to mold you as a person for the rest of your life. Whether you're on the team, if you're Connor McDavid, you're going to turn into even more of a Terminator than you already were if you're a fan. What I will say, and I shouldn't have to say this because a real fan's not going to give up on their team for a loss like that. Do not let this deter you. Sports are about community. Sports are about that feeling. Sports are about that feeling you got tonight when you sat down in front of your TV and you heard the first lines of Alanis Morissette singing "Oh Canada." That feeling in your stomach of we're really about to do this. Game 7 for the Stanley Cup. That's why you can't quit sports. As much as every fiber of your reason, the reason within you would probably tell you, hey, this is a bad use of my time. I could put my money into more productive things I have more control over. This is the only thing in the world that's going to make you feel like that. This is the only thing in the world that has that type of feeling in your soul that's going to give you that innate feeling of something is about to happen. And you can manufacture that when you're watching a movie or a TV show or a play or reading a book. You can facsimile that in media. But to quote the great Spike Lee, like we talked about on yesterday's show, this is for real. I am under no illusions that the Oilers are content with how tonight went. You as a fan are not content with how tonight went. I'm not saying you need to be okay with it, but there is nothing to feel ashamed about. The Oilers did everything they could. They did not get blown out. They did not get embarrassed. They played a B- hockey game. Florida played a B+, A- hockey game. There was not a big gap in this game. You are going to struggle with this feeling for the rest of your life of what could have been. And that's the thing about sports. You don't know if you'll be back. You don't know. This might be it for this permutation of the Oilers. Not to say things are hopeless, but you're probably going to have to take an honest look at things and say, they were really good this year. A lot of things went right for them. Where are they poised to regress? Where can they progress? And we'll talk a little bit about that coming up next. And we'll tie a bow on the playoffs before we start talking about the offseason. But let's take one more quick break, and I will be right back. Thank you to everybody who is on this episode of Locked On Oilers. Sports are tough, man. It is difficult to be this invested in something that you do not have direct control over. I'm sure you did all your superstitions. You ordered the same takeout, you ordered the same drink, you sat in the same spot, wore the same jersey, talked to the same friends, went to the same restaurant, used the same treadmill, used the same dumbbells. I am sure you did everything you could. You have to appreciate these moments for what they are. And it sounds very loser, frankly. And I'm going to reveal something about myself right now. My senior quote in high school was, "There's no such thing as a good loser. You're just a loser." And John Tortorella had said that about a Rangers team in like 2010. And as a 17-year-old who submitted their senior quote, I thought it was funny. And I thought to some degree, it's true. If you lost, it's great. You're a great sport about it. No one cares. We are going to hear a never-ending stream of consciousness from people who don't actually care about the Oilers saying, "Oh, well, McDavid didn't have any points in game 6 or 7. He wilted under the moment." Or Draisaitl only had 4 points in the final. He wilted under the moment. Those guys are going to be the hardest on themselves out of it. There is nothing any person in any forum could say to Connor McDavid that he wouldn't think about worse about himself. You do not understand how people that are this competitive operate. You do not understand how people with that mindset think. Connor McDavid is probably not going to sleep until Wednesday night. He is going to be about as distraught as an individual can be that is not in a life or death situation. And I understand we are talking about sports, and this might sound dramatic, and this talking off the ledge type thread of conversation might seem a bit extreme. Teams don't make the Stanley Cup final all the time. The Oilers had to wait 18 years to get back here. So you're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to be angry. You can't let that overshadow the happy parts of this run. To get where the Oilers got, they have validated and solidified the idea that went into building this team of complementary pieces around 2 of the 5 best players in the world. Draisaitl and McDavid are undoubtedly 2 of the 5 best players in the world. I don't care. You can say what you want about the points for game 6 and 7. You say what you want about Draisaitl. Those are 2 of the 5 best players in the entire world. There is nothing you are going to tell me to convince me otherwise. At this point, the Oilers have proof of concept. Now, they got some questions they got to address. They got to find a way to improve their team because very clearly they do have deficiencies. And any good team tries to improve. Florida's going to get looted for parts this summer. Reinhart, Montour, Ekblad, Kulikov, all free agents. Those guys are going to be, more likely than not, most of those guys will be with other teams because they won a Stanley Cup. And as is their right, they're going to cash out the first real chance they get to go to unrestricted free agency. But circling back to the Oilers. This is about as tough as it gets. There's losing in the way that you have to when you're putting a team together. You know, it's one thing to say, okay, we're tanking this year. And I know the team doesn't say they're tanking, but it is one thing to say, okay, the team's not very good. They're clearly trying to prioritize being in a good position for the draft. They're trying to prioritize getting their young players talent. There's a good chance you never see the Oilers in Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final again as long as you live. Stuff like this does not happen often. Appreciate this moment for what it is. Savor the good parts of this playoff run. McDavid joins a very, very exclusive list of players who have won the Conn Smythe as a Stanley Cup loser. That's not a good thing. And I'm sure he doesn't care that he won the Conn Smythe. That is something you will talk about for the rest of your life. You will talk about Connor McDavid's 2024 postseason for the rest of your life. You will talk about the Oilers forcing a Game 7 after being down 3-0 the rest of your life. Sports is so much tied to the memories, who you share them with, you know, watching the game with people, going to games, going to watch parties, going to a bar, going to a restaurant, and just wanting to feel a part of something bigger than. And that is That is what makes sports invaluable and why you can't replace them. Sure, you can get together with your friends, watch a movie. Nothing is going to feel like that. And I'm pointing over my shoulder towards where the TV is in the other room. Nothing is going to feel like that. Surrendering yourself to sports, it is not for everybody. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are books and show tunes people, as me and my friends call them. Read books, they like Broadway, they watch movies, they watch TV, but they don't like sports. It doesn't resonate for them. They don't understand why we take it so seriously. They call it sports ball. They say they go to the Super Bowl party for the commercials. Those people are missing out, because as miserable as it feels right now, there's nothing like that feeling I had Friday night when the Oilers won that game and said, we're going 7. You cannot replicate that in other walks of life. And the Oilers do not have anything to be ashamed about. They very well could have won this series. That is not a consolation. That does not make you feel better. But it should give you some peace of mind that the Oilers proved they belong in the NHL's top weight class. That is something the Oilers have longed for a long time. They drafted McDavid when I was a senior in high school. I am 27 years old now. It took a long time for them to solidify themselves in this upper crust of the league. They will not be back more than likely for a while. That does not erase the good parts. That does not erase the bad parts. It is all part of one large mosaic of contextualizing this experience. You wouldn't trade this experience for anything. And I know you would say, oh, what if they won? It's a different experience. If they won, you would not be having that type of feeling right now. But this is where we're at. This is where we're at. And the Oilers are a good hockey team. They have talent. They don't have a lot of cap room, but they have talent. And you cannot put a price. Well, yes, you can, but you cannot put a price on the type of talent the Oilers have. There's some stylistic things. There are some identity things that I think they could benefit from, certain types of skill sets they could use to sprinkle a little bit more through their lineup so they're not as dependent on a few things. But they're in the ballpark. The Oilers are absolutely in the ballpark. That will just about do it for this edition of Locked On Oilers. So if you could be so kind, make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple or Spotify, take the 2 seconds. Please leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell so you get a notification whenever a new episode goes out. Leave me a comment. Sad, angry, numb. Let me know. How you feeling? That will do it for this edition of Locked On Oilers. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Till then, let's go Oilers.